Hi everyone, so today I've got the brand new Danessa Myricks Groundwork palette. This is the Blooming Romance and this is an almost complete face palette. And I'll be using that to do my full face with a little bit of help from the original Defining Neutrals Groundwork palette. I also have her new Yummy Skin Water Powder Serum, which I'll be starting with today as my primer, followed by her Yummy Skin Serum Skin Tint. So it's going to be pretty much a full face of Danessa Myricks today. And before I get started, if you're new here, my name's Hannah. I'm 47, not a professional, just somebody who really loves makeup and all things beauty. Here on my channel, I just like to share product news, looks, tips, anything that might interest you. If you think you'd enjoy that, please do like and subscribe below. That really does help me. And if you just put a comment below, that really does help too. Anyway, my skin type for you is fair to light. I have neutral undertones and I have mostly dry, but I do have quite an oily T-zone. So let's get on to this video. So I have done my eyebrows, so I haven't used either of these palettes to do the eyebrows. Here's my Defining Neutrals palette, which is looking quite messy because I have used it quite a bit since getting it. Now this can be used for the eyebrows because these palettes are pomades, which are these ones here. The larger ones are all pomades, which are the creamier texture, like almost putty cream, but not, it's hard to describe really unless you feel them. They're not like wet creams, but they are like putty creams, cream to powder, a bit similar to the Natasha Denona ones. And then we have powders. So you can use the powder you can use the pomade followed by the powder in your eyebrows, or just one. But I can't find a colour match that really works for me, so I have actually skipped that step. So I'm going to go straight to this new serum. And the reason I'm interested in this one is this is supposed to cancel out any oils from coming through. So I've never ever achieved that with anything. I always have to powder around this area here because there's always shine and grease coming through no matter what I've used, whether it's a matte foundation, whether it's a skin tint, whatever, and it doesn't matter what primer I've used, what setting spray, what setting powder, always. So I'll be very interested to try this one today to see at the end of the day, which I will check in with you and show you whether or not my oils have come through. So this is a mattifying water to powder serum and it contains niacinamide and hyaluronic acid, and it specifically says not to shake, just to click from the bottom. So if you see here, you just push this and a drop will come out, see? And it's very watery. So I've rubbed 3 drops now into my hands and I'm going to pat it in, which is what Danessa says to do, concentrating very much so on my T-zone area. But I will take this to the whole of the face. Just went in then for another 3 drops because it doesn't feel like it's going to cover my face, so I don't know if I've gone mad, but I've used 6 drops. So this costs £34.50 and I got mine from Beautylish. I'm buying this from the UK. I found it really hard to get my hands on this from anywhere. Beautylish was the only place that was stocking it when I looked for this, and as I check now, they do still have it. So if you can get this elsewhere, then great, but the only place I've been able to find it is Beautylish. A very reliable company for me to order from here in the UK though, so definitely recommend trying from there. So this primer has dried down already, which is amazing when I put 6 drops, and I can feel a sort of powder. I don't think you can see anything. I don't think it's done anything to change pores or blur or anything, which I don't think it actually promises to do in fairness. But my skin definitely feels a bit like I've put a soft powder over it. It's going to be really interesting to see how this works. So next, going in with the Yummy Skin Serum Skin Tint, and I've got this in shade 4. So this skin tint launched I think last year, and I know that I like it. It's £39.50 is what I paid for it, and it contains lots of good ingredients for your skin, such as vegan squalane, vegan collagen peptides, cactus extract and ceramides, and sodium hyaluronate. So it's packed full of goodies for my skin, which for me these days is a good thing. I do like having skincare. I was on the fence a bit about that, but the more I try products with skincare in, the more my mature skin seems to like the way they sit and the way that it basically settles into lines. So I think that's why this is one of the products I enjoyed last year. So I'm just going to put this directly on and use my BK Beauty 101 brush Shade 4 does give me a little bit of colour, and if you watch my channel you'll know that last year I was buying most things to try to match my tan, so I went up a shade. So if you're a skin match for me, you could probably go down a shade. But when this one is blended out, like with most skin tints, it doesn't make an awful lot of difference. So I would stick with shade 4 for my skin, to be fair, because I think it'll cover me whether I'm wearing a tan, whether I've got a little bit of colour from the sun, which I hopefully won't do because I'll be trying to stay out of it. But I think this works whether I'm fair or wearing a tan. I really don't know whether I want to wear a tan this year because, one, it's just messy and it adds to my routine, and two, my hands always look awful on day 2 after wearing a tan, and three, it means having 2 different colours of foundation, so it cost me a fortune. So there is one layer of the skin tint. You can see how quickly that went in. Just while I spoke then it all went in, and it's just not giving much coverage at all, but it does give a very nice healthy glow. So I just added a second layer, so I am able to build this up a little bit. You can see the colour coming through now and an awful lot of shine. And we've also got this primer underneath which is supposed to lock that shine. So this is a shiny tint plus the primer's locking it in, so very, very shiny. I will definitely be using powder today. But I was able to build this up and it has corrected the redness now around my nose area. So yeah, it's a very pretty tint, and I think this is an easy one to apply. You can apply it with your hands as well as a quick sort of rub in and be done with a natural look. But yeah, I like applying this one with the brush though. So now let's look at this new palette. I'm not going to swatch this for you because swatches just don't do this justice. It needs to be built up and you need to blend them together. I think this, I'll put a picture here for you from the website showing you the swatches, but I'd rather you saw them in action to really get a proper impression of them. The swatches don't really help. Sorry, my dog's barking again. She's determined to ruin my videos this week. She's been doing this every time I start filming. Hopefully she's stopped now. So I'm going to try to use this shade here first off to see if I can use it as a colour corrector here. I'm going to use the tiniest bit because I do think it's a little bit too dark for me to do this, but I want to just try and use this palette as much as possible. And this one's called Desire, so I'm going to go into the pomade. It's quite a peachy shade, and I'm just going to pop a little bit under the eyes here. And I'm using my Merit No. 2 brush, which I will be using a lot today because this is a perfect brush for these palettes. Just blend this out. Now it is the tiniest amount, so I'm not sure if it'll do much, but I can't put more than that because it's way too strong. So I don't know, maybe it cancelled it, maybe it didn't, I'm not sure. But it's not really the right shade for me for this. I'm now going to use the fine end of this, and I'm going to go into this pink here, which is called Crush. I always use a white pen, the Victoria Beckham one, to just add a pop of colour into my waterline. So I'm going to try Crush today. Slightly pink, not white, but I think it might work. Yeah, that does work, gives me that little pop of brightness. And I'm actually going to put Crush all over both my lids as my base and hopefully cancel out a little bit of the purple. I'm doing this instead of using any concealer. At the moment I don't have any concealer on. It definitely works as a base, it's not cancelling out everything. So this eye is without, this eye is with. So I now have Crush on both eyes as my base. It's cancelled out a little bit of the purple but not everything, so not quite as effective as a concealer, but it's a good base, so when I go in with more creams that should hopefully cover because they will just layer. So the next step for me is contour, and there's nothing here I can use as a contour. There's no browns apart from these are sort of reddish browns, I think you could sort of call them, but obviously they're exceptionally deep. They're too deep to be bronzer or contour for me, so on much darker skin tones these could be used for that purpose, but not for me. So I'm going to go back into defining neutrals. I'll just point out with defining neutrals, this shade here is lovely in the waterline and for the base, and this colour actually does cancel out my purples much better. So I'm going to go into the Chiseled pomade from this palette, and I use this as my contour. Well, this pomade formula works brilliantly on the face, it really does, so using it as contour, as bronzer, as blush. It just blends and melts into the skin very, very nicely. And with these palettes, you can see the circle here. You can just hook your nail or maybe a brush and you can just pop them out. They come out very easily. I don't know if I can do it like that without dropping it to show you. Yeah, there we go. So there's the powder, and here is chiseled in the pomade, which I can just take straight out. So if you have, and they're magnetic, so if you have a magnetic palette where you like to create your own, you could swap these around and make your own palette, or you could take the best of both of these two and create your own mashup, if you like, of Groundwork. So I've taken this one out because I don't want to collect powder whilst I go into the palette, so I'm using my 109 brush and I'm going to pat into the pomade, and I'll use this as my contour. Just see how easily this just blends in. It's actually quite a perfect contour shade for me. And this shade is Mirage, and again I'm going to use this now as a bronzer just to go over the contour area. Now this is a little bit warm for me, so I'm not going to put a lot. I think the contour has pretty much done the job. I don't need an awful lot more. So now I think I can continue just with the new palette, and I'm going to use the same brush, the 109, and I'm going to go into Allure here. Now I will be using Allure on my eyes, so I'm going to use this as a blush so I have a cohesive look. And the other eye colour I'll be using today is Smitten, so I've taken the powder out of Smitten, and I'm actually going to use this as a sort of topper on my cheeks to set down the blush that I've used and give a sort of lighter shade of blush. Because the concept of these two is the pomade goes first and the powder goes second, and the powder locks it in, even though you can put one on top of the other. So if you have a powder down first, you can still put the pomade on top. So really this is about playing with the palette and seeing what works for you, because it works both ways. You could be building pomade, powder, and it still works. And I'm just going to set the rest of my face now that my blush is down. Take that shine off my forehead a bit from the skin tint. And I'm using here the new YSL translucent finishing powder. Really been enjoying these powders since they launched. So now for the eyes, using my Merit No. 2 brush and using the thicker end, I'm going into the pomade of Smitten. This is the one I just used the powder for to top my cheeks. And I'm going to put this all over the eye. And I'm using my Sony G Pencil Pro to run this underneath. I'm now going into Allure, the pomade again, which is the shade I started on my cheeks with. And I'm going to take this more to the outer V and take it into the crease, but not further than here. These are not terribly deep. The pomade shades are a lot less pigmented than the powders. So that's why I think it's good starting with these as the base, and then you can come in with the powders on top to lock it in and to bring a bit more pigment. Now I'm going to use my Sony G T3 brush to go into the Smitten powder, and now take this over all the areas where I put the Smitten pomade, and it will start to bring a bit more pigment, and it'll lock the pomade into place. I'm now doing the same with the Allure powder. I'm taking this into the outer V over the area where the pomade is, and you can see straight away that a lot more pigment comes with the powder, and it just works very nicely on top of the pomade. They really work together very, very well. It gives a lovely blended finish. Actually very easy to work with, these two. And now using the fine nib of Merit No. 2, I'm going to go into the pomade of Bliss. I'm going to use this to line under and over. Now I know from using the Neutrals palette that these pomades are fantastic for eyeliner. In fact, the Groundworks palette is one of those palettes that sat on my desk for a very long time, because it's just one of those go-to ones where you can always reach for essentials like having a black or dark brown cream liner, or if you just want certain shades as a base, it's always there to use with most looks. So now this pink one is out, this is going to be always there, as in if you're using more of a pink mauve colour palette. Just see how really very, very easy it is to blend. Now, I always say that powders are the easiest thing to use as an eyeliner, but when it comes to this palette, the pomade in this is exceptionally easy because it is that cream to powder formula, and I just don't think you can really go wrong with it. And I'm going to go into XO now and just take this on the top to deepen up ever so slightly against the lash line. This shade is, it's like a black, I don't know if it is a black. So this is XO, the deepest shade in the palette, which I'm now using as a darker eyeliner. When you have it on your nib like this, it's that much more deep. But see what I mean about swatching on your hands with this palette? It just does it no justice. I can't show you. You can just see it as it performs on the eyes, which I hope you can see is really good. It just looks terrible when you swatch it. I just think that's the worst way to demonstrate it. You see how much depth I'm getting off this when I'm using this pencil liner and this shade. And using this Rapper 13 Mini, if I go into this very deepest shade here, XO, the powder now, I can lock in this liner and just slightly smoke it out. And now lastly, going into Crush, the powder now, not the pomade. I could use this as a pop of light here and slightly bring it onto the lid, just to brighten this inner area here. Use it here to blend out the line I've created with the deeper shade and bring it up to the brow. So I'm just going to tidy up a little bit with some concealer, put some mascara on, and I'll be back to show you this final look. So there's my final look using this. Very, very easy using the pomades and powders together. Lots of different looks can be created. I've gone for quite a cool look today and quite a simple look. And yesterday I went for a warmer look, which I'll just quickly show you now. I'll just insert a clip here. So first I went in with Desire, the pomade, all over the lid, then with Adorn, the pomade in the outer V and into the crease halfway and underneath the eyes using the fine nib. Then I went in with Lovesick, again underneath the eyes using the fine nib, and then tight lining this into the lashes. And then blending it out, very similar to the look I did today. Then I used the Crush pomade to fill the rest of the inner eyelid, and then the Crush powder I actually used to cover the entire look because I was quite happy with the amount of pigment I got from the colours from the pomades with this look. Then I used the XO pomade to do a tight line on the eyelashes and finish the look underneath and above. And here's the final look using those shades. So obviously there's plenty of other looks you can create with this palette, but for me they're the main ones because these are the colours I would use pretty much on my eyes because of my skin tone. But if you have a deeper skin tone, I'd say it's almost the reverse. So I'm using these ones to darken up and then using this here to do all of my major eye colours. These are great colours here for using as eyeliners. They're very good for using to deepen up the crease area. And I love the way you can match up your blush. So like I did today, I used two of the shades on my eyes, also on my cheeks, so I get that cohesive look. And talking about cohesive, I'm now going to try the same thing with my lips. Now for hygiene reasons, I don't really want to dip a brush in and apply to my lips in case I need to dip back in. So I'm actually going to scrape a little bit out using this. And for my liner, I'm going to use Bliss, which is the colour I use to line underneath, not the deepest shade here that I use because that would be way too deep, but the first one I used. So I do actually have here a Danessa Myricks mixing palette. So I'm going to put it onto here. And I have my Lisa Eldridge lip brush here, so I'm going to put some of this Bliss on the edge of this and then use it to line my lips. Now as with every single look I do have a little bit of Delilah lip oil on my lips. How I start every single makeup look. It's been over an hour, so it's pretty much died down, but my lips are a little bit moistened, which should help with applying this because it's not a particularly hydrating formula. So I'm now going to use this to line. So the tiniest little bit on that brush, and I lined my lips and brought it in as well, so it's given me quite a bit of colour. And with that bit of lip oil underneath, it doesn't feel massively hydrating, but it does feel okay actually. I feel like I might need a gloss on top, but it is quite comfortable at the moment, and I actually really like that colour. And I'm going to get a bit of Allure here, which is one of the colours I have on my cheeks and on my eyes as well. And I'm just going to put this more on the inner part of the lip. We're using my finger now, so I'm not going to tap back in with my finger. So there we have a little bit of Allure inside, so it's more cohesive. So we've got Allure now on my cheeks and on my lips and on my eyes. But that is way too dry for my lips, even with that bit of lip oil underneath, so be warned, these are very drying, so they will exaggerate lines and texture if you don't hydrate your lips. So I'm going in with a bit of Fenty Glass Slipper Clear Gloss. And that's given my lips a bit of a shine, and they feel a lot more hydrated and comfortable now. So there's my final look using pretty much the entire Blooming Romance Groundwork palette on my face. Apart from dipping into the Defining Neutrals palette for my bronzer and contour, I have used it for every single thing on my face. Obviously I did mention my eyebrows, I can't get a match from either of them for eyebrows, and I can't conceal. I don't think it did much in the way of correction underneath. But for a base for my eyes, for eye creams, with the pomade, with the powders, the eyeliner, the blush, the powder blush, the pomade blush, the lip liner, the lip colour, it's served all of those purposes. Now it doesn't have a highlight, so I need to add a highlight in. And it doesn't add any sparkle, so you can obviously do that if you have some single eyeshadow sparkles. Or what I would do if you do have this in your collection, and I do think that these pair together fabulously, I would use this. And this is the new LIGHTWORK palette. Obviously if you have any of the LIGHTWORK palettes, you could probably dip into any of them. So this is LIGHTWORK 5, which was released last year by Danessa Myricks. This is an incredible palette. Now I did say to someone only a few months ago, they asked me did I have a desert island makeup set, and I said it'd literally be these two, which is the Defining Neutrals Groundwork with this, because if you have these two together, you can almost do an entire face of makeup, obviously not blush, but you can then give that sparkle, and I think they make the perfect combination. So now having the Blooming Romance palette to go with this, you can get the blush, you can get the pinks, you can get everything. So this is a fantastic trio to have if you did have them in your collection. And just to give you an idea of some of the shades you could use with this look, these are the ones I would choose to add to the Blooming Romance colours. I'll just pop a little bit with my finger on the lid here, and just look how that instantly changes the entire look. Obviously this is a big sparkle, so I'll just blend that out a bit so it's not too crazy. So there's just a little bit of that on the eyes, just to give a little bit of sparkle. Obviously you could add an awful lot more. I put a tiny little dab, but that's just to give you an idea. So playing with the two together, it could be great fun, and you can come up with some amazing looks. So I'll just pop a little bit of highlighter on. I don't have Danessa Myricks at the moment. This is the new Iconic London Lit and Luminous. Let's put some of this here. This is a stunning highlight. And that's my final look. I will check in with you tonight, so I will go off camera now and I will come back in at least 8 hours so you can see how these are wearing. Have the pomades moved or creased into the top of the eyes, because I have set them down with powder, so in theory they shouldn't. And let's just see if this primer has worked and have I got any grease or shine coming through. But at the moment, none at all. I wouldn't expect there to be after only an hour and a half or so of application. And yeah, it looks great at the moment. The shine is well and truly kept in. So I'll be interested to show you later how that's worked. Anyway, I'll be back soon. Just popping back in quickly, I forgot to mention about buying this actually. I'm buying this in the UK, and the only place I can get it at the moment is Beauty Bay, where it is still available. I paid £71 for this, and there's a link below for you if you did want to get it. If you're in the US, I noticed that Danessa sold out of this very quickly, but it is still available at Sephora. So I've popped a link below for that too. It might be available in other places, but anyway, I just thought I'd let you know about that. Anyway, see you tonight. So it's now past the 8-hour mark. In fact, it's nearly 8.5 hours since I applied all of this. And the first massive shock is there is no grease around here. Even under the magnification mirror, there's no grease. So it looks like this Yummy Skin serum, is that what it is? Serum? Yeah, water powder serum, has stopped my grease from coming through. In fact, it almost looks quite dry, not in a bad way, it just looks, it feels dry. That's really strange, because if you watch any of my videos where I've done wear tests on foundations or skin tints, I have never checked in without saying my greases are coming through, which is what I expect. It happens with everything. Now, I have got setting spray on and I have got setting powder, so obviously it's had that on top, but I wanted to do that because that's what I always do. So I just wanted to wear this skin tint in the way that I would normally. I'm not testing the skin tint in particular, it's not a new one, it's one I already know I like. So I've just basically applied it exactly as I would normally. But I've reached 8.5 hours nearly. Well, no, I have reached 8.5 hours and there is nothing. It's dry here, it's dry here, and we've had some sun really beaming through the house today and going in and out from the garden and into the house. I got really hot. So I've got hot, I've gone in, and then it went really cold. We've had typical British weather today, hot and cold. So I've gone in and out of different weather conditions. I've been quite busy and active, and nothing. So I will try this out pretty much every day, I think, until I do my end of month favourites video. I'll basically do a full face of all my favourites. So if this is my favourite, which if it carries on like this it would be, if this is my favourite primer, I will be using it. But if I don't use it, I will at least tell you in that video whether or not I've changed my mind on it and why it hasn't become my March favourite. So hugely impressed with this. Quite gobsmacked. As for everything else, I'm quite pleased to say everything is pretty much stayed. You can still see my blush, so I think locking it in with that bit of powder was a good move, because if I'd have just left cream, I don't think it would have lasted. The lip colour probably didn't last more than an hour, so it was very short-lived. But what has lasted is a little bit of the liner, so I've still got quite a decent line around the edge of my lip. So didn't last on the lips, but it's lasted as a liner. So to be fair, I think I'd be more inclined to use it as a liner, because if you remember, it was a little bit drying unless I used the gloss. So very good longevity as a liner, so that's quite impressive. Everything around the eyes has stayed, but there is one thing. If I show you here, hopefully it's coming up on camera, you can see a sort of white line there. It's not massive, it's not terrible, but definitely in the crease of my eye, even though I've powdered over, has slightly disappeared. Now, I don't know if I can just do this, which sometimes you can when you've worn creams, but then I've got a powder on top. Yeah, it's made no difference. If it was just cream, it might move, but it's all set down. So it's set down with this white line. But then you can't see it because I've got hooded eyes. So unless I'm walking around like that, you'd never know. So I'm not massively unhappy with that. I don't think it's terrible. I've had a lot worse, but it is worth keeping in mind that there is a little bit of creasing. I don't have particularly greasy eyelids. In fact, I don't really. So yeah, even with the powder, tiny little bit. So just keep that in mind. But you can see the eyeliner is still there, hasn't moved. Where it's winged out, hasn't moved. Everything is in place. So everything I've used today has been a really big success. And I've got to say, I was really quite pleased with the way I was able to use this palette to do a full face. I love having cohesive looks. I loved having the matching lips, cheeks and eyes. I think that's a really cool thing to do, and it's not something you can do with many things, is it? Or you have to pull out awful lots of products to try and get that right. So to have everything in one palette, especially if you were colour matching to an outfit or maybe to a certain part, like if you have a dress with a flower or something, you want to match that flower. I love the idea of making everything match up like that. So I really enjoyed using this palette. I think Danessa Myricks is fabulous when it comes to having such unique products, and it's always fun. Like I love using her eye paints and mixing them all up, and it's a bit like a little lab in your own home where you're creating different concoctions and experimenting with them. And to be fair, there may be a few hit and misses initially because they might be new to you, but I always find they're quite user friendly and I can play with them and have quite a bit of success early on. So you might try this the first time and not have success because it is different and it does require a little bit of learning and practicing. But I'm an expert by no means. So other people can create something much more interesting than what I've just done. But I think for sort of everyday and glam sort of look that's quite pulled together and matches up with your outfit, I think anyone could do this really if you wanted to. I'm really impressed with this palette. And as I said, the neutrals one ended up on my desk when I got it because it's one of the top things I've ever bought. I think I love the way this just includes everything. So if you're in a mad rush and you were just going out the door, not coming back for a week, not very likely I know, but anyway, grab this and you're sorted, and grab this and you're sorted for your glam. So now we can do exactly the same thing with the pink one. So very happy with this. I love Danessa Myricks. I pretty much buy everything she releases. I find her products fascinating and just really good fun. So thank you, Danessa, for another fabulous release, and I can't wait to see what's coming next from Danessa. She's definitely one of my favourites to follow and one of my favourites to collect. So I've really enjoyed making this and I hope you found it interesting too. I'd love to know, have you got this, or did you get the original Groundwork, or are you thinking of getting one of them? If you are, I'd love to hear from you below. And that's about it from me for today. So if you've enjoyed this video, I would like it ever so much if you could like and subscribe below. And I hope to see every single one of you for my next video. Take care everybody. Bye.